he is okay, and I do believe that it is streaming as well. All right, so we will close. Okay, so make sure there's 200 odd there, and good. Okay. The only problem that we have is right now, and we'll try again. And see if I can actually share the screen, because it's not coming up. It's the first time that's ever happened, and I don't know what to do. It's actually only coming up with me, which seems crazy. That it will only allow me to share this screen, which is already on. It seems crazy. All right, so no worries, we'll just crack on then. We'll have to. And what I'll do is, hang on, get rid of that. I don't know what that's coming up in front of me for. Oh, dear me.
All right, let's start with the basics. Let's start with how to log into your meeting room, how to join your meeting room. Now, when you first come...
That was weird. So it's still streaming, I do believe, and we still have plenty of people in. But for whatever reason, we're not allowed to share the screen. Nope, still not on. What on earth is it doing that for? Every time somebody joins, it comes up and does that funny, weird thing. Isn't that strange? So let's see if I can actually get through this then, and why it won't share the screen. Nearly 300 people on, and it won't let me see it share the screen with what I wanted. Very strange. Okay, so I'll tell you what we're going to do then. I am going to just have to read out the actual presentation. So the first thing I will do is I'm going to share my screen for the new platform that we're actually going to be talking about anyway, which is the school program. So it's called School. Hang on, I just need to mute. All right. It should all be just muting automatically when it comes in, but it's not doing that at the minute. So I'm going to share the screen onto there. Okay, so this is the new platform that we're actually talking about here, which is Checkmate the Matrix. Now, today we're going to be talking a lot about trusts. We're going to be touching a little bit on equity. On this part here, this is, look, if we see this part now, we've got live. It's actually on the private trust webinar. This is the actual community site here. So it says you can have all the posts going in there. So everybody can be talking to each other on there. Then we go into the classroom, and this is where all the courses are going to be. So the courses that we have is the mindset course, which is basically developing your mindset, talking about the two pains that are possible in life, which is either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret because you were not disciplined. Then the other course is outmaneuver the matrix, and on here what it is about manifesting money. So in other words, you know, if you've ever listened to anything at all on Andrew Tate's stuff, you don't need to like him. I don't care what you feel about him, but you know, and he tells you if you want to beat the matrix, if you want to be above them, then the only thing to do is to create more income so that you can actually get above and outmaneuver the matrix. So the next course that we have as well on here is Checkmate the Matrix with equity. Now, there's nothing in it just yet. That's why it's not open to anybody. So if some people are asking, it's all going to get uploaded. All right. So there's the 3 top courses there. Then the one we're talking about here was going to do private trust creation, which is this one here, how to protect your assets, asset protection. So there's a workshop in there with all the videos explaining how to do it step by step. Then they also have the ACE self-protection. The ACE stands for aware, control, escape. So the idea is obviously that self-defense is to be aware of everything that's going on around you, to be aware of your surroundings. And it's also, it's not just physical, it's very psychological about how an assailant would actually interview you. It's very rare that you have crazy people diving out of bushes to attack you. You know, it's more going along the lines of they will actually go up and start shouting and screaming at you, interviewing you to see if you were a suitable candidate to be assaulted, attacked, robbed, raped, or whatever it would be. Just get a quick drink. All right, so there's a lot of good stuff in the ACE self-protection. We say it's against the zombie apocalypse that we see is happening all around us right now. And then on the other course is the debt smash and the fiat currency. So getting to know all about fiat currency. Now it ties in very well with equity. So if you tie in equity in with the fiat currency, the education that you'll have on there, and the actual ability to discharge debts, not only debts, but also, let's say, fines, that it could be even criminal fines. You can discharge them using equity. So if you use the two together, equity and the debt smashing fiat currency, you'll be well ahead of most people around you. We also have the last part on here, which is the recorded PMA meetings. So every meeting that we have, which is on a Thursday at 7:30, when we go over any topics that we're discussing at the time, or even just an open forum where we can have questions and everything answered on there. So the next button across is the calendar. So you'll actually see on here today, obviously we're on this one. So if you click that link on there, would take you to the meeting. So if you are in part of the Checkmate the Matrix community, and you would just click on there and you will go to the meetings, and there's the future meetings already booked. So they're all on there with the links, and anything else that I want to put in there, I will put in as and when it's needed. Okay. Now, I'm not going to click on any of that to show any details, but that is basically it. You have your classroom and then back to the community. We will add up. The leaderboards are a bit of fun that we have, and obviously the members can go and have a look and see who's in. Okay. Now I will stop sharing onto there. I will come back in. Let me just have a quick look. All right, now I think it's we're on just over 300 now in here, plus we're live streaming as well. So the whole idea was we were actually supposed to be sharing the screen for the actual the slides that I have on. Hang on, stop! I have to cancel that because it's asking to share it again. Okay. So if you want to actually, there should have been slides, and there were all slides. So if you do want to have a look at more about the Checkmate the Matrix, so you can go and click that link at the top of there. That should be a live link that takes you to the website for to join that. Now, the actual course. The courses themselves, all of them in there, including the one to create the private trust, where actually if you click that button and go over to there, you will have 7 days free in there to be able to actually try it out and see what's what and see if it's something that you want to do or not. Everything is in there for you to be able to create a private trust. All of the information is there. Now I'm gonna have to actually just read these out because it won't let me share the actual page. It won't let me share the screen. So I've tried even knocking everything off. The chat's not working, but for whatever reason, it won't actually show. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly have a look, and I'm just going to read it. So just so you know, right, you've got trusts, and they are all governed in a way by trust law. Obviously, everybody would know that. But trust law itself, that comes under the jurisdiction of equity. Now, equity jurisdiction itself, it is a massive and complex actual area. Now, the course that we have inside of the Checkmate the Matrix community program, the equity course there is about how you can actually stand in equity, how you can stay in honor and discharge any presentment that you have placed in front of you. So it's not about the trust part of equity, right? When we're actually talking about our specific course inside the community for equity law, rather than sort of like trusts and equity. So the two separate jurisdictions that we have in any common law country, right? So, I mean, we've got members on from Australia, Canada. They're definitely common law countries. I think New Zealand will have one or two, as well, obviously, all over the UK. We have a common law jurisdiction, but there are two separate jurisdictions that exist in there, and it's common law and equity. And equity, when we study equity, and we do it, you know, in the course that we actually have available, it shows you there that not only is it a separate jurisdiction, but it is above the common law jurisdiction as well. Okay, so if we actually look at trusts themselves, we're talking about private trusts. We want to create a private trust. Now, they can also be public or statutory, and they actually come under a public jurisdiction, but we're going to create them as a private equitable trust. So we're going to use the actual jurisdiction of equity to create our private trusts. Now, there's a lot of myths. Yeah, myths, I suppose you could call it that, and stories and craziness that is mentioned about private trusts, that it has to be a special woo-woo thing, and there's like, if you use the wrong word, you're going to end up losing everything and going to jail and all these crazy things. I have a colleague of mine, and he is a financial expert. He has been involved in finance, in trusts, for over 40 years, is basically his entire working life. And he actually creates private trusts for his clients, especially the clients that are going through a bankruptcy. Now, he uses the trusts, the private trusts, to protect the assets that they have when they go into bankruptcy. So if you imagine you're going into a bankruptcy court, I've done it twice. Okay, last time was in 2007, and you don't go into a court. It's like an office. It's just an office, but there is a judge there, and the judge will stamp, or not stamp, but generally they'll stamp your bankruptcy application once it's accepted. But when they accept it, the next thing they do is you get called into the office next door, which again is like part of the courtroom, and it will be the official receivers. And the official receivers will want a list of all of your assets. Now, the assets can only be the ones that are attached to your estate. Okay? This is why when you listen to people that talk about trusts, they call it estate management and estate planning, because they're trying to plan on your estate for now, but also for when you die. All right? So what happens is they're going to want a list of your assets. So with the private trusts, they always ask straight away, right? Okay, well, we need to see all the details of your home, your mortgage, blah, 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 blah. Now, with these private trusts, it stops them in their tracks. Now, they're not happy about it. That's all. But they cannot do anything about it if the trust has been created correctly and done in the private and it's not public. Now, when my friend is doing them, my colleague, he writes it out there and actually states the person and then the full capital name. So, and it works hands down every time. And not one time has anybody ever lost in court their home or their possessions that were on trust on that private trust document, no matter how it is written. So, you know, we know how to actually create these documents, okay? So we're creating them in equity. So whenever there is a clash between common law and equity on the same matter, equity shall always prevail. Now, that has been established for many centuries, and it's well documented as well in the Earl of Oxford's case, which you can go and do research on. And that was in 1615. After the Earl of Oxford's case, the king decreed on the advice of the Attorney General that if there was a conflict between the common law and equity, the jurisdiction of equity shall prevail. Okay, so we're going to go over a few different things. Now, a lot of people don't actually really get the idea of common law itself either. Going through that we went through a few years ago when they shut all the businesses down, including the gyms, there was a lot of gym owners trying to stay open. And I was watching videos of them and they were like putting up, holding their cameras, they were getting invaded by the police and they were saying, no, we're opening under common law. I'm standing under common law. As if this is some kind of bulletproof armor that protects you from doing whatever the police say. And it's ridiculous. It's to say, oh, do no harm. As long as I'm not harming anyone, I can do whatever I want, right? That doesn't really cut the ice. So common law is made up of decisions of the judges in High Court, Supreme Court, or the higher courts. So common law, it's statutory legislation. It's made by the government. Okay, so what happens is the High Court judges or Supreme Court judges, appeal court judges will make a decision on a case, and that case will then stand as precedent set in common law, and that is the common law, and all of the lower courts have a duty to follow that precedent. That it is their duty to follow it. Okay, so equity is a separate jurisdiction. In cases, if it does ever go to a court, I heard in the Chancery Division under the Judicature Act, still can't say that word, and that's from 1873. They did merge the actual jurisdictions, but only where it could be heard in court cases, not the actual jurisdictions themselves. Now, when we study the course, okay, in equity, that you will see, we start going over a lot of language and a lot of terminology and a lot of the words that come through from, say, Blacklaw's dictionary. We use Bouvier sometimes. Now I'll see if I can say this properly. This is Latin, so it's consuetudo tollit communem legem, and that means custom supersedes the common law. But it cannot supersede equity. But it can supersede, custom can supersede the common law. So even if there is a High Court judge or a Supreme Court judge that's made a decision that all of the other lower courts have to follow, they can actually have their own customs in that court, okay, that they can actually follow. Now, you'll see it quite a lot, and the only way that I can explain why these councils get away with what they get away with and why these utility companies get away with what they get away with by issuing their own summons, by issuing their own liability orders, by issuing their own warrants. And a warrant, by the way, is simply, it's a banking term. It's actually a charge, a bill, a warrant, just in case you didn't know. So the customs, I think, once the customs are set, and it doesn't have to be an ancient custom, which somebody was trying to put it, oh yeah, but it can only be ancient custom. These people are making their customs up as they go along. Okay, so You know, don't think that these customs don't make massive differences. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually popping between screens here for you now. So I'm going to come back on there. Now, what I can't do is like chat to anyone because the chat has gone completely off. But I will keep going through the actual hang on, let's see if I can see anything on there. The settings, make sure that if what I'm going to do is to see if people can raise their hands later. Yeah, all right, I'm not going to put that on. What I'll do in a while, I'm going to put a raise your hands feature so that people can ask questions if they need to, but not yet because we've got a lot to get through. So I'm just going to close that for now. And so let's have a look, see if I can share the screen. No, it's not going to let me share it whatsoever. Oh, actually, now it will. So let me see if I can actually share that for you. Make it a bit more interesting than my face all the time. There we go. All right, that's a bit better for you. Okay. So the separation of the jurisdictions, that's what I was talking about. Was further shown in the Senior Courts Act 1981, Section 49. Subject to the provisions of this or any other act, every court exercising jurisdiction in England or Wales in any civil cause or matter shall continue to administer law and equity on the basis that, whenever there is any conflict or variance between the rules of equity and the rules of the common law, reference to the same matter, the rules of equity shall prevail. Okay. But when we actually study the cases of equity themselves, right, which is going to be went into deeply on the Checkmate the Matrix course, okay, you will see that equity will always take precedent over common law. Now, again, we're talking about private express trusts. They are private, created in the private jurisdiction and outside of the public statutory legislation. So we create our private trusts, and we're called express trusts, wholly, exclusively, and inherently under the equity jurisdiction. You have a choice of which jurisdiction to actually have it created under. So equity is the vigilant, not those that sleep upon their rights. That's what I was talking before about customs. So we have to learn more about equity and how it works, not just on trusts, but in general, because if we can't get the remedy that we require, then it is our fault for not researching enough. Now, a lot of people that were on Facebook before and they were asking questions, and I was saying, well, you can discharge that in equity. And they were saying, well, how do you do that in equity? I said, well, you have to get on a course and learn it. And then they get all rude and like, you know, I don't want to do a course. Well, there you go then. Stick where you are then. So, but our private trusts were created exclusively under the jurisdiction of equity. So just bear that in mind. The two jurisdictions that we have, common law, which is for the whole country, but we have equity running alongside it and above it, actually. Okay. Now, a trust is an intent, which is a contract created by a settler with an entrusted trustee or trustees. The trust contract ensures that the trustee shall administer the trust fund, which can just be your house, by the way, right? It's still the trust fund because it's an item of value, right? And or property only for the benefit of the named beneficiaries. Private trust contracts, similar to any contract, can be verbal or written down, but you want it to be written down to be a solid contract. Just bear that one in mind when it says that. But verbal contracts, a lot of people don't realize how powerful verbal contracts are. They are still legally and lawfully binding. Right? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So in order for a private trust to be lawful, there has to be three certainties that need to be met. And that's the certainty of intention, the certainty of subject matter, and the certainty of objects. So we're going to go over that. Now, the certainty of intention is very, very important. Okay, the certainty of intention, it shows that the settler has the full intention of creating a trust rather than a gift or any other type of contract. But also, what was the trust created for? Now, always what I would be putting that down as is the trust was created to protect the assets of the family for the future generations. It has to be the intention of the trust. It has to be what you actually say. Now, I'm not trying to be crazy or anything, but you have to state this clearly, what your intention is. So let's just do the example of going into a bankruptcy court. Now, if you actually went into a bankruptcy court and they said, well, what is this trust created for? What was the intention? And you said, well, to stop you taking my house because I'm going bankrupt. That will collapse the trust because it was not made in an equitable thought or an equitable manner. You have to be standing with clean hands in equity, and it has to be the intention. All right. So, this is interesting. If you look at it, it has to be the intention of what you were doing it for. Now, there is a guy that does a lot of like YouTube videos and TikTok videos. He calls himself like a black belt, something or other. All right. But he does talk a lot of nonsense. He's a complete and utter shill. Now, somebody had put up a comment about having a baseball bat under their bed, and he was like slagging them off and mouthing off about, you can like go to life imprisonment and all this nonsense. But the thing is, it's about the intention. Okay, the intention. Now, let's say I've actually just helped a friend, and he had a knuckle duster in his home. He didn't even know he had it. He'd actually bought it in a frame as an ornament, okay? And it had broken and he'd forgotten about it, so he threw it in a drawer. For some reason, we'll not go into it, he actually got his home searched by police and they found the knuckle duster. Then he got prosecuted for having an offensive weapon in the home. I can't remember the year, it's very recently, but they just changed the law that if you have an offensive weapon in your home, then you can still be prosecuted for having an offensive weapon. Okay? Now, even if it's just in your drawer, which was in a drawer, right? Hidden away. But the thing is, it is an offensive weapon because there is no other reason to have a knuckle duster apart from hitting someone. Please make sure you're all muted. We're having a bit of interference there. Okay, so a knuckle duster being in a drawer, the intention can only be to hit someone with it. You cannot say that it is not for anything else. Okay.
Yes.
So hang on a second. I'm just going to stop sharing.
But you've got more.
And we'll mute. There's people coming in talking. We have to get it muted. There we go. And now I've lost the screen again. Let's see what comes up with that. No. Okay, you have to make sure that you keep yourselves muted. So I've just had to come back out from sharing the screen, and now the share has disappeared again. All right. So I will bring my camera back in and talk to you again. All right, you have to make sure you keep muted, okay? Because it gets massive interference. And now, okay. So as I said there, all right, so the intention is very, very important. So the next subject, the next certainty is a subject matter. What is the subject matter? Well, that is the actual stuff that's going to be put into the actual trust document, okay? The trust is an instrument for asset protection. So the each piece of property must be identifiable with a unique number, and it has to be segregated from all other property. Now, when we're doing these private trusts, we can't go stating this law, that act, or even case law. But the fact is that there was a famous case with London Wine Company that went bankrupt. Okay, now when they went bankrupt, they were like an investment house. I don't know if you ever heard about it before, but you can invest in barrels of wine and bottles of wine, and you can invest in the same whiskey, bottles of whiskey, barrels of whiskey. Not something I've ever done, but you can do it. Now, this company went bankrupt, and when the receivers went to actually inspect the assets, they had piles and piles of bottles of wine. They said, they're not ours. They are actually held on trust for our investors. People have bought those bottles of wine for it's their investment, so they can either take them or they can sell them, blah blah blah. So they went through and it says, well, we need to see their unique numbers, right, their identification numbers, so that we can know whose bottle belongs to which customer. And they hadn't done that. All they had done is say, for instance, you go in or I go in and you say, well, I'm going to pay you £500 for this bottle of wine. They just went and put it in a different part of the warehouse, but they didn't give it a unique number, and they didn't say which bottle belonged to which customer. So nobody got the bottles of wine. The receivers got all the wine. Okay, so bear that in mind. When you are doing the actual trusts, you have to have every single, I mean, it doesn't have to be this knife, that fork, that spoon, but you know, all of the items have to have an identification number. So the third certainty is the certainty of objects. Now that might sound a bit strange, certainty of objects. What's an object? You might think a thing is an object, which it is. However, now they're talking about beneficiaries. The beneficiaries of the private trust itself. So they have to be specifically named. They have to be clearly identified. Just the same as like the assets need to be clearly identified, so do the actual beneficiaries. They need to be clearly identified. Okay, let me come back in here then and see if I can make sure that we keep everybody muted. We're doing well then, and then it all. Hang on. Oh, rats. All right. Okay. Let's see if I can do it again. All righty. So fingers crossed it's back to where it should be then. Okay. Make sure we keep all muted. Now, we actually create our private trust, and the private trust is created under the UK's Recognition of Trusts Act. Now, we can't write that into the actual documents because it's not going to be private if we're writing public acts in. However, that is what it's recognized under. So there's no magic dust. There's no woo-woo and any of this nonsense. It has to be written out in all lowercase with like squiggly lines in between it and colons and semicolons and dots and whatnot. All right. And it doesn't have to be done in syntax, grammar, or any of that. I don't actually worry about anything like that at all. But it is also created and recognized by the International Court of Justice, and that's in The Hague. So this act was implemented by the Hague Trust Convention, and it was agreed internationally in 1985. So that is how your private trusts are actually recognized. So when, like I've just said before, like my colleague goes into the courts, the bankruptcy courts, similar to when I go into courts for people, I'm not allowed to speak. They call it a Mackenzie friend. So you just have to have all of the actual information passed to them. Okay. But when they go in and they have their private trusts and they lay their trust documents down to protect their assets, it has to be accepted. And it's accepted because it's under the UK's Recognition of Trusts Act, and it's also under the Hague Convention of 1985. So it's not that we're making this up, right? These trusts have to be recognized and have to be accepted. It's not that we've just, we've decided and so we can go and tell everybody. It is what it is. So the European Court of Human Rights, also known as the Strasbourg Court, It's an international court of the Council of Europe, which interprets the European Convention of Human Rights. This is where you would have to actually go if anybody tried to say that your trust wasn't valid, because they are the ones that actually say that the trusts are valid. So, for instance, Spain detests trusts, private or otherwise, but they must, because they are a member of the EU, they must recognize them under the Hague Convention. They don't like it and they will fight it, but they must. So just bear that in mind if you want to go to Spain and live. I know a few of you actually already do live in Spain. So the Hague Trust Convention, Article 1. This convention specified the law applicable to trusts and governs their recognition. The Hague Convention, Article 3. The convention only applies to trusts created voluntarily and evidenced in writing. This is why we express ours in ink, which also creates a binding contract. Remember, I mentioned that before. We actually write it down so it creates the binding contract, but you want it to be recognized by the Hague as well on the international scene under Article 3 of the Hague Trust Convention. So make sure that it's written down. Now, that might seem a silly thing, so that trusts created voluntarily, but you probably know by now, being in the Facebook group or watching the videos, that there are dozens and dozens of trusts that get created that you're inside of and you don't know anything about it, unfortunately. But this is what we're talking about, our own private trusts. So the Hague Trust Convention, Article 6, a trust shall be governed by the law chosen by the settlor. Now, I mentioned this before. So the choice must be expressed in the terms of the instrument created on the writing evidence in the trust. So what we need to do is to write it clearly what jurisdiction the law, right, was going to be chosen by the settlor, by you, right? You, the one creating your own private trust. So that's why we're actually creating it all under the jurisdiction of equity. So trusts are either express trusts or imposed by law. Our express trusts are created intentionally by an express or inferred legally valid declaration of trust of the settlor or his agent. But generally it would be, you know, the settlor that's actually declaring it. It's a declaration of trust. All right. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about this in different groups. And they say, oh, well, my trust is going to be better than your trust because it's it's notarized by a public notary. Public notary. Well, you're actually saying it yourself. If it's a public notary, how can it be private? So if we wish to create a private trust, we can express the law as the private jurisdiction of equity, right? We can do that because we've just seen the Hague Convention. However, if we have it signed and sealed by a notary public, it will no longer be private. It can only be public then. So to say, oh yeah, I've created this lovely private trust, you know, and I've seen companies doing it for like easily £5,000, £6,000, £7,000, £8,000, right? And then they go and get it signed by a notary. So you've lost all of that money because it's now public. So never, ever have your trust documents signed or witnessed by any officer of any court, including a public notary. All you need to do is to have anybody, strangers. You know, I actually had my window cleaner witness mine years ago, right? Okay, and another guy that was just a student at my gym, right? So just have it, 2 people witness it, and that's all you need. Stay away from officers of the court and public notaries. So first recorded trusts, they can be traced back to 800 BC, invented by the Romans. Of course they were, and the Romans are still ruling everything as anyway now, right? And what they used to do is have the Vestal Virgins as the trustees, obviously. So trusts were first used in England by knights that were going to war for the king, right? You probably heard me talk about that before. So they used to use the church or the people in the church as trustees because the monks, they were under an oath of poverty. So they had to live in poverty. So that meant that they weren't allowed to earn an income or own anything. But the church themselves, they actually looked after the monks or the priests or whatever they were. So they were perfect to be used as a trustee because they weren't going to go and steal the land or the property or the castle or whatever it would be for the knights. Okay. So under trust law, English trust law, you cannot lose your assets even in a criminal case. Now, when it states there, they usually have a 2-year window. What I mean by that is you cannot go into, say, a bankruptcy hearing and say, oh, I've got this trust written up. I did it this morning. Okay, that's what I mean by that. So even if it's proven to be set up in the correct time frame with no malice aforethought, mens rea, then your trust will stand. What does that mean, malice aforethought? Well, again, it goes back to the intention, okay? The intention of the trust. You can't say, for instance, oh, well, it's there to stop my debts. I'm hiding everything from my debt collector. That is definitely not what you want to say. It's the intention. So it has to be set up with no malice aforethought. So what you're doing it for is simply to protect your assets for your family, for the future generations. Okay? So the English monarchy, they use private trust for all of their wealth. So when the Queen died, over 17 trillion was transferred, you know who, right, in trusts and held in 56 countries all around the world. As people that were actually dealing with some of them trusts that told me that as well. So the monarchy, right, they actually own 25% of Australia. All of it under a private trust. That's why they don't get taxed on anything, right, even outside of England. And that's why they've got so much wealth and it just grows and grows and grows. Have you ever been dealing with any of them before? HM Revenue and Customs. They've got around 600 offices around the UK. All of them are private limited companies. Hopefully you did know that. They are all private for profit limited companies and they all have trusts or all held in trust in a Bermuda tax haven. Believe it or not, even though you try and do that and they'll chase you. So we've got statutory trusts, right? We're not talking about them. We're talking about private, right? Statutory trusts are public and they are imposed by a statute expressly or by necessary implication. Now, you've got resulting trusts. Resulting trusts are public trusts which are imposed in the transferor's favour. That's the ones that you get trapped into, right? You didn't even know there was a trust. The thing is, a trust can be in existence and nobody needs to know that there is a trust there. That's how we get into all of this trouble, because we get kept putting into public trusts and we don't even know we're in a trust. So our trusts, private express trusts, okay, they are private, as in they're outside of statutory legislation, and now all trusts, I mean public, private, anything, it all actually comes under the law of equity or the jurisdiction of equity. But we create our private trust expressly, wholly, exclusively, and inherently under private equity jurisdiction. We are in the private domain with our private trusts, not in the public. So quickly then, just to make sure that we got the whole setup. So if we look at the triangle of the trust, we have the settlor who creates it, the trustee who's going to be looking after things, and then the beneficiary, because they're going to benefit from it. And inside of it, you put the property, which they call res. Okay. Now the settlor, right? Just say I'm going to create my own trust. So I actually am the settlor, create the trust, but once I've created it and then have nothing else to do with it, okay, so it then becomes a fiduciary relationship between the trustee and the beneficiary. I cannot go interfering with it. That's what I mean by that. So all roles are different, okay? You've all got your own job, right? The settlor, though, can also be a trustee or a beneficiary. A lot of people get mixed up with that. Once the settlor creates a trust, I've just said that, their job's finished and they've got no part of it. But you can be the settlor and then you've lost your job once you've created it, then you go when you leave it. But you can also be the trustee, all right? So you can do both jobs because one of the jobs is going to be finished with as soon as you've done it anyway, right? The settlor, now we call it a reposit. They reposit property into the trust, all right? Now, the thing is, you have to have, if you're the settlor, you have to have complete full rights and interest, i.e. be the legal owner of whatever property you want to assign it or put into trust. I cannot put your house into my trust because I don't own it. I'm not the legal owner. So once in the trust, the res, it's legally owned by the trustee. A trust instrument can't own things. The trustee owns them. But remember, they're segregated from the trustee's personal property. So they have no beneficial rights to the res or the property or the trust fund, whatever it would be. So property, bricks and mortar, it's still a trust fund. It's classed as a trust fund. So when I'm saying it's segregated from the personal property, so a trustee, if they go bankrupt in their own right, they can't use the trust property to fund their bankruptcy. So, you know, and also they can't attack. Nobody could, if you were in debt, they can't go and attack the actual trustee for the property because it's not theirs, like as in can be taken from them. It's segregated from them personally. Okay. Gonna drink. Now, the reason why we call it reposit, because the reposits property into a repository, a vault. That's what it means. Look it up. The settlor reposits, you don't deposit. If you deposit something, what goes in is not necessarily the same thing that comes out. Think of cash that you put into a bank, right? So say you go and get, do people get paid nowadays? I don't think you get paid by an envelope with money in anymore, do you? I used to get that years ago. But say if you got like £100 in cash and you go and stick that into the bank, okay? So you deposit £20 into the bank serial number AB123456. All right, whatever it was, like 20 of them or whatever. When a settlor reposits, say, gold bar into a trust, the beneficiary will receive exactly what they put in, the same gold bar. But when you go and put £100 or whatever it would be with that serial number that we just mentioned into the bank, that's not what you're going to get back. You may get back something with the same kind of value, but it's not going to be the same actual £20 note or whatever it is that you put into the bank. Hope that makes sense, because you've deposited something. When you reposit, you get exactly out what you put in. Okay. So there's the picture of the gold. Whatever property goes into a trust, the exact same thing comes out. So the settlor can reposit any property into a trust, but what can be described as property? For the definition, we're going to have a look at Black's Law. If you've got Black's Law, go get it now. Get it out and we'll have a look at it. We'll go through it because it's very interesting. Excuse me. So Black's Law Dictionary, Centennial Edition, the sixth. Try saying that again. The 6th edition. That's the best one to look at. Okay, that was the one that they made just after they got rid of gold out of the actual money system. So then it became complete and utter fiat currency. So have a look. Get a hold of the 6th edition. So property described that which is peculiar or proper to any person, that which belongs exclusively to one. The term is said to extend to every species of valuable right and interest. More specifically, ownership, the unrestricted and exclusive right to a thing. The right to dispose of a thing in every legal way, to possess it, to use it, and to exclude everyone else from interfering with it. So, if I have fingerprints, my fingerprints, do they belong exclusively to one, i.e. me? Yes. Is fingerprint a different species to say a pound note? Yes, but it can, is it valuable? Yes, they are valuable to me because it would be painful if I lost them. All right. Do I own my fingerprints? Yes, I do. Are they unrestricted and exclusive right to a thing, right to my fingerprints? Well, they're mine and they're unique, so they must be exclusive. So the way I can describe it is that my fingerprints can be placed on trust, as could my DNA, as could my eye scan. So I placed them on private trust. All right. So the only way I do get, like, people say, well, you can't do that, you can't do that. Well, let's get Black's Law out and we'll look at the description. I mean, it's up to you what you want to place on your private trust, but this is what I have mine written in because I don't want anyone else having my fingerprints. I don't want anyone to interfere with my DNA. I don't want it to be changed by anything or anyone. So let's have a look at that word. Species, as applied to things, it signifies individuality or identity. Thus, on a bequest of a specific picture, the legatee would said to be entitled to the delivery of the picture in specie. What that means is, right, in front of me, I've actually got a picture of a bonsai tree. Okay, so if I actually get that put into a trust, then I don't want you to come and draw the picture of a bonsai tree and give it to me. I want that picture because it's in specie. I want that particular individual picture that I placed on trust, not your picture. All right, hope that makes sense. So Black's Law again, ownership, equitable ownership, ownership rights that are protected in equity, exclusive ownership, ownership free from any kind of legal or equitable interest in anyone else. So it's yours, it's nobody else's. You have exclusive ownership of your blood, your DNA, your eye scan, your fingerprints. I mean, this is the way that you can read it. So examples of property or things, we have corporeal and incorporeal, tangible or intangible. So tangible meaning if you run into it, you're going to bang your head and hurt yourself, right? So it can be bricks and mortar, cars, furniture, jewelry, money, bank accounts, land, profits from property, fruits, vegetables, plants, etc., animals, pets, all of that. Incorporeal, right? You can't actually physically grab a hold of it. It's going to be your DNA, sons, daughters, fingerprints, eye scan, blood, your body fluids, your physical body. Now, I suppose your physical body is quite tangible, isn't it? If you ran into somebody else, you'd probably get hurt. All right. So the private equity jurisdiction private trust deed. So we're going to create a deed. That is one of the things that we're going to do. We're going to create a deed of trust. So what is it? Why is it important? Well, the private deed, what it's going to do is it is going to set out the basic lawful definitions and operating principles of your private trust and equity in order to protect all of your assets and private property listed and referenced within the deed, all with the individual title numbers. Can you remember I said that? And all per the 3 certainties of trust law. It's important because the private trust deed names your trust and sets out the scope, content, terms, and conditions of the private trust in equity and natural law. It proves the existence of the 3 certainties to make the private trust valid in equity and natural law. Intention, what was your intention to do that? The subject matter, what is actually in there, and the objects, i.e. who are the beneficiaries. The private trust deed names the settlor, right? Trustees, beneficiaries, and the private trust, the private trust deed also lists all of your assets that are going into the private trusts. Okay. So what is an asset? In general terms, describing the things of value that you own or are responsible for. A trustee is a man or woman who is or will be appointed to oversee the assets and operations of a private trust, as well as direct the funds for one or more of the beneficiaries. Who is a beneficiary, or what is a beneficiary? A man or woman who will benefit in some way from the assets that are protected within the trusts. What is a settlor? It's a man or woman who creates the private trust to lawfully transfer the control of an asset to a trustee. Sometimes you'll have a trust general manager or a protector. We've been using a protector when we're talking about equity when we go to court, but I've never used one in a trust or a general manager. I've never ever used them. Not yet. Private trust creation and support and paperwork, assignment of property. Well, we were talking about the deed. So we have the deed. You create the deed, which is private. You don't really have to show anybody that. But you're also going to have an assignment of property, a list, if you like, of everything that you're going to put into your trust. So the trust assignment, it lists out, and remember the references, the reference numbers, all of the assets and property or res that you wish to place within the private trust. And it's important because the deed of trust assignment specifically lists all your private property to be protected by the private trust and places it all into the trusts. All property, including sons, daughters, houses, cars, any other assets, anything you can think of. Okay? Now, when we go into our checkmatethematrix.com, the actual community that we've just created, inside of there, the private trust course details every single document that you are going to have that you need to do that. Okay. Now, if people did not want to do it for themselves, then we can create them for them. But if you go and join the community, you can see and learn how to do all these yourself. The private trust creation support and a document. Again, we also have a memorandum of trust creation. The memorandum of trust creation, that just shows our certainty of intention, certainty of subject matter, certainty of objects. All right. So we create a separate document that we can actually even show to others because it does not have private information on. So the importance of the 3 certainties. There are 3 certainties that must exist for it to be lawful. We told you that. The intention, did the settlor truly intend to create a trust, but also what was it for? Subject matter, there is defined property. that should say reposited under the trust. And the objects, there are beneficiaries of the trust. This is the expressed, and we express it as well through the Royal Mail, through tracking numbers. So we actually put tracking numbers into the documents. So when we actually send them off, it's Royal Mail, first class or recorded, whichever one you want to use, and you send it to yourself, say if you're creating your own trust, then there's proof that you created it. You've got the document number from the Royal Mail. It's not you that did it, it's the Royal Mail. So they can't argue with the Royal Mail. So you've got proof of when you created it. Okay, so you've got a public notice. What is a public notice? Well, there's a few different reasons why you'll have a public notice and what you can use it for. Okay, let's get a quick drink. Now, you can use it and put it on a public notice board or a library notice board. So if you want to actually express it, some people would put it in a local newspaper, just an announcement to say that they have a private trust created. But remember, we're actually doing expression through the Royal Mail, so you can do that anyway. However, right, what you can also do with the actual public notice, if somebody was trying to challenge you, say a debt collector, for instance, or if it was in a bankruptcy hearing, you can present them with your public notice, which is what we call a statement of interest. So all it is showing them that you have got a private trust and that this property is not theirs to be attacked because it's held on trust by certain trustees, and there's no private information inside of the actual public notice, so you can just present it to them and anyone and state to them, look, this property is not yours to steal. Okay, all right, so that's the certificate of private trust creation. We're also going to get a certificate, and on the certificate it'll show the name of the trust and the date that it was created. We actually put the date that it was actually first verbally expressed, because you can verbally express a private trust, and that will be the date that it starts from. Even if it was 10 years ago, if that's when you actually verbally expressed it, you can use that date, but put that on the document. Okay, so you're creating your proof that the trust exists. That's what that certificate is for. So it creates a public certificate to prove that a signed lawful trust exists. Okay, so certificates, they've been used to prove things since writing was invented, that. So why is it important? The certificate of private trust creation, it's a formal certificate of your expression and declaration that your trust exists in the private jurisdiction and in equity. So if you were ever challenged at any time, you can show proof that the trust was created through the public certification, and it's all signed by the trustees. Now, if you've done it as we do it through the Royal Mail, you also have the Royal Mail tracking numbers on them, so you can see what date it was actually posted as well. So you're providing a public statement of proof, which is self-evident. Okay, that's to protect and enforce the rights to property, the objects of action in Chancery. Now, we also have a certificate of trustees because we want to list who the trustees are. So we want to make sure that everybody knows their job. So once you've created your trustees, whoever they're going to be, you will create a certificate, either one certificate with all the names on or an individual certificate for each trustee if you have a few of them. Now, obviously, it's up to you who you use as your trustees. You want to make sure that you trust them and that they trust you and they will do what is meant to happen. So what is it? Why is it important? So it's the trustee certificate. It's an indication of the certainty of the trust creation, stating your intention, assignment of property, definition of objects, all overseen by the trustees. It provides formal recognition and evidence that a trustee exists and that the trustee is in possessory legal ownership of the trust assets. Possessory legal ownership, remember that. So it's segregated from their actual personal belongings, but they legally own it for the sake of the trust. So we're talking about a trust, the nature of trust. So in Psalms 56, 3 and 11, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God I trust and I'm not afraid. To be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved. That's George MacDonald. So it's vitally important that you pick the correct trustee, or that you are a trustee for somebody else as well, that you actually act correctly and you act in equity. So prick your trustees wisely. Who has got your back? We're paying the highest tribute you can pay a man. We trust him to do right. It's that simple. That's Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird. So there's the picture there. If you're falling backwards, the trust fall, you have to trust the people to catch you. So trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It's the foundation principle that holds all relationships together. Stephen R. Covey. Hopefully you'll know who that is. So the private trust creation, support and paperwork again. The next one is the units of beneficial interest. So we actually, what that really means is who's the beneficiary. So you're going to have a beneficiary certificate as well. So all the beneficiaries will have a certificate. So it shows that they are the beneficiary of the trust. But all trusts have units. So you divide the units up between the actual beneficiaries. You might not want the beneficiaries all to have equal benefits. So you can divide it up into different units for different beneficiaries on your private trust itself. So defining who gets what in the trust, exactly. So you're agreeing a percentage of asset ownership for the beneficiaries or by the beneficiaries, and indications sent to beneficiaries of their ownership of the property. Certificates get issued, confirm who gets what in the trust. That's what it's for. So the UBI certificates, they are a formal allocation of benefits using a system of numbers of units issued to the specific beneficiaries named in the trust. Why is it important? Because it's written proof of exactly what any named beneficiary will receive. So what does that mean? Important definitions: unit of beneficial interest. It's a lawful equivalent of shareholdings in the private trust. So if you've got a company, for instance, a limited company, you'll have shares or shareholdings. On a trust, you actually get units of beneficial interest. So the UBI certificates are issued to the beneficiaries with the number of units allocated or agreed as a representation of their interests in the private trust. So what does a private trust do? Well, it can protect it from inheritance tax and probate. So if you have a will, you see a lot of adverts by the government for wills. What does a will do? A will guarantees that you're going into probate. Absolutely. Now, it might be able to help you with who's going to inherit what, but only after the government have had their fair share. Well, it's not fair, is it? But they're going to take it anyway. But if you actually create a trust, it can protect from inheritance tax because you don't inherit the property, you inherit the trust or the trust beneficial units, and it stops it going into probate. You can't have it going into probate if it's in a trust. So your property is secured, no future grabbing of your assets. I don't mean that rude in any way. And there's no tax payable if you're not actually inheriting it. So I can't remember his name again. I don't watch television, but got sent a clip of him, and he was talking on breakfast. Martin Lewis, is it? And they asked him a question about inheritance tax. He went, inheritance tax is completely voluntary. If you remove the assets from your estate, no one pays inheritance tax. And then they cut him off because it was live. Although it was obviously a little recording somebody sent me. But what you're doing, you're removing the assets from your estate and placing them on trust. That's all there is to it. That's literally all there is to it. So there isn't no magic dust. There isn't no woo-woo, and we've got to use the dot and the colon and the squiggly line, right? You've removed the assets from your estate. That's what you have done. Okay. So then, let me come out of there. I am back in here. So then, quickly have a drink. I was talking really fast there, so that I could get through all of those slides. So the actual, that is just like a brief presentation in reality. However, if we actually go into checkmate the matrix, and you go into the courses there specifically for the actual private trust is very, very in depth, and you will be able to go through all of the documents. Every single document you'll be able to show exactly all the videos on how to create them, and then also on what exactly they are for. Okay. So on the actual, I'll show you it again. So if I share my screen again, right, and go into checkmate the matrix. Okay, so we're on to here now. Okay, so we go into the classroom again, right, and it's just like this board links across the top. So we have all of these 3 courses here that are getting filled in, but there, when we go into the private trust creation, if I open it for you now, so you've got the videos of it. Okay, so you get the introduction, and it goes all the way through recognition of trust act. It explains everything to you on every single video in there. Okay, but it also has all of the documents as well. So it shows you all of the documents, how to do it, and how to actually create them and what they're all for. And it shows you absolutely everything. And then there's the link for it there. So you click that link there, and this will actually open up the document, download it to your own device. And then you can actually, let's come back, share, stop sharing. And come into there. Okay. So you can create all of your own documents if that's what you want to do. So not only, is it the actual checkmate the matrix program, the way that I've actually been designing it and building it is because I'm seeing so many people that are having massive problems. I don't know why it keeps doing that.
Now let's go to chat. Now chat right now is very simple. You type a message and you hit enter and you send your message, okay? Type a message, hit enter, send a message. That's about as simple as you get. Now we are going to be adding more features here.
What is going on?
We're going to be adding private messaging, also called direct messaging. We're going to be adding emojis and reactions. We're going to be adding the ability to click on a message and have it.
Dear me, don't know what that keeps doing there. Very strange. Okay, so lost my train of thought there. Right, so the reason why that there we go. So we've got that on the top. So if you want to go and have a look at the checkmate the matrix, just click the button at the top and that'll take you straight to it. There was also on the slides if you had to click any of them. But when I'm seeing people coming to me all the time and they're saying, well, I've got bailiffs at the door, I've got these problems because some of these groups have been like, advising everybody to go and fight tooth and nail on every single thing, be it like, council tax or utilities or anything like that. And then everybody's got all these problems. But the way that I see it is like, I'm a martial artist, right? I've been like involved in martial arts for many years, fought professionally, fought all over Europe, all over. I was live on TV, and obviously I still have many contacts all within that realm. And obviously with that, we've got people like Andrew Tate, which you're going to actually resonate with because we're similar backgrounds. So I listen to him when he's like fighting the matrix. Now, you don't have to be as loud-mouthed or anything like that. All I'm talking about is like when they say that we should be able to rise above the matrix and be able to checkmate the matrix. Well, we can do it with like getting extra streams of income. We can actually create extra streams of income so that you don't panic if one stream of income dries up. You can have other streams of income. So I've developed a training program where you can actually go in and you can actually see how to create your own online income and many different streams of it. So you can create your own life. You can create a far more fluid life. When we were looking at, we're talking about, the families and the family's finances, and most people in the UK and the United States are only 2 or 3 paychecks away from going homeless now, and it's no joke, right? So I have been homeless, so I know exactly what it's like, and living in a car and having absolutely nothing and not knowing like how you were gonna get through the next day or eat or anything, and to be in that position is ridiculous. That the government would put you in that position by crippling our jobs. So we can actually look at different ways of creating other incomes and other income streams so we can checkmate the matrix, be better than the matrix. So what Andrew Tate says, you don't have to agree with everything he says. He's very noisy in some things, whatever you may think. I would always check out, don't listen to the mainstream media on what he says, because they change everything that he says and they make it sound like something different. Okay. But that is one thing I feel passionate about, is that people should be able to create their own lives. So that I've designed a course to help you know how to do that. Okay. And again, if you just go in and check, you've got 7 days to check it all out. And if you don't like it, stop it and leave. And it's not going to cost you 1 penny. All right. Now, on top of there's like the mindset, right? Developing your own mindset to actually be more positive about everything, because, the amount of posts that I have to wipe off going into the different groups, because all I want to do is complain and moan about certain things, when we have to be fighting for these things. We have to be developing our own lives for these things. We have to create our own reality. So you're going to create a reality of good or bad. So, I mean, the only way, I don't think you've got a chance of saving the planet. I really don't, right? But if you do not try your best to actually create a positive life for yourself, then no one else is going to do it for you. Okay. I don't care if you think that all of these silly words like Nassaurosaurus coming along, because it isn't, right? And like Donald Trump's not going to ride over the sunset like on a big white horse and save everyone. No, the only one that can save you is you. It's got to be from within. So this is just ways of helping you to actually do that. Okay. Now, if people don't like that, then fair enough. But there's only you that's going to save you. Nobody else. Believe me. So then the course on equity that we have inside there, equity itself is a massive subject. And I've been studying it for quite some time, and it still blows my head. And I know people who have closed down criminal cases where they were looking at 12 to 15 years in prison, and they discharged the charge with equity, and the case was dismissed. And what they said was, all bonds are discharged. All bonds, bonds, because every single case, every single charge put to you has a QSIC number attached to it. Every single parking ticket, every single speeding fine, an assault charge. I'm not telling anyone to hit people. I'm not telling anyone to go speeding either. All right. But I'm just saying, everything has a QSIC number. All court cases have a QSIC number attached to it. So we can discharge the charge, because we know, and equity knows, that there is no lawful money. There's no money. Not since they got rid of the gold, whatever date it was. Okay, but I think it was before the First World War properly in England, right? But definitely since the 30s, there's been absolutely no gold attached onto any currency. We've never had money. We've only had currency. Now, because there's no money, you can't pay a debt with a debt. So any federal note, be it Canadian, English, US dollar, they are all federal debt notes, and you cannot pay a debt with a debt note. You cannot promise to pay something with a promise to pay, but you can discharge it if you know how to use equity correctly. So this is what that course in there will be about. It is far more powerful than doing a lot of people call it the 3-letter process. I don't know if it's 3 or not, but I mean, when I've got rid of a lot of people's debt before, but it's took a hell of a lot more than 3 letters. But you use proper acceptance notices. Now, I don't mean accept for value. I do not mean that. They very, 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 very rarely get accepted for anything. If you do a correct acceptance under equity notice, then it's not about a value. It's actually they have to discharge the charge, be it like, it could be a tax bill. We actually have an example, and it was like $108,000 that they discharged on a tax bill. Okay, so and it works. Now there's people done simple things that got rid of parking tickets, got rid of speeding fines because they discharged the charge. That's what the equity is about. And that's what that course will be on Checkmate the Matrix, alongside how to develop your own online business, how to actually increase your income, multiple streams of income, as well as next to how to create your own private trust, not only to protect the actual assets that you have, but if you do get a business that starts making a lot more profit, then you want to protect that with a private trust as well. Later on, we'll also introduce you what we found is the foundations. The foundations are offshore foundations, which can give even better protection, but we're not going to go into that now because it's more about the private trust. Okay, so it is a big subject. Now, not only that, there you've got, not everybody wants to do a self-defense, but it's very good on psychology as well, right? Treating yourself like the VIP, and you can be your own bodyguard of your own body being the VIP. So they're very good on the actual psychology of everything and how to read people and know what's going on when people are actually trying to speak to you. Okay, it's the same thing about on equity. When people ask, can I ask you for some information, a policeman or something like that asking you for information, that's a charge, you know. We don't have to give anybody information. We are private citizens. Well, not even that, we're private man, private woman. So when someone asks you for information, you should be on your guard straight away. And it's the same in the self-defense thing. They work hand in hand. Okay, so hang on. Let me have a quick check on here. Where is the settings now? Where are all settings? All right. Okay, so then let me have a look. Let's see if I can get the chat to come on. What you can't do is raise your hand, which is a shame. Right, so I'm going to see if I can get the chat to come back on. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I've done it because we've never had this many on before. So if I go into the chat, yeah, there's people there now talking about the chat. So obviously it's going up very, very fast. Wow, that is fast. Hi there, the link doesn't work. Okay, so I've got people from Canada there as well. Good. All right. Okay, so from Ireland, brilliant. All right, so that doesn't work, does it not? Okay, give me a check then. Give me a check. Give me a second. I will put the link in the chat. So I'm going to put it in there. All right, so I've put a link in the chat. I don't know how I can actually put it up onto there. So I will. I'll keep putting it in for you as well because there's a lot of people coming through. So you can ask any questions that you want now. So we've still got a few minutes left. I'll quickly go over everything. I've been putting the how can you prove a specific asset is in the trust? Well, you do it on the assignment of property list that I explained. So you do an assignment of property, and every single bit of property you put in, you actually give it an identification number. Okay. So they all have a private identification number. It's all recorded. So we will be sending out recordings for the people. Okay. And you don't need to do an international stamp when you actually post it to yourself. You just post it to yourself on first class signed for or recorded delivery. And it will work in Scotland under Scottish law. Yes. The only thing that's different, if you want to do changing anything on the land registry, it's different in Scotland, but how you change the land registry, I'm just trying to work it out, what they call it. We do an RX1, which is a restriction. Okay. So I'm going to put the link in again there as well. Just keep putting it in for people because the questions are flying all over the place. Anyone in Milwaukee? Wow, really? Well, Universal Community Trust, I wouldn't be talking about them. I wouldn't be doing anything that. You can, if you've got a limited company, so Paula, you can put, if you own the shares in it, the shares are what you put in your actual, in the private trust. If you have Susie, you can put loads of people that I know, loads. The first time I heard about private trusts was back in 2005. There was a guy who come around to our because I used to be in the property development, and he was coming to the property development meetings that we used to have every week, and they were putting massive amounts of property into that private trust. So that was when I first heard about it, back 2005. Trying to think of his name now. He doesn't. Does the trust include a power of attorney? No. You know, your trustees are your trustees. You can make a trust work in Denmark. What is in Denmark in the EU? You can have your limited company as a trustee. I would rather have humans, but right. But but a limited company is a person. All right, it's classed as a person. What was the name of the land registry form you mentioned? The RX1, a number 1. RX1. It puts a restriction on your property, which stops any other corporation from putting a charge on your property. All right. So if you actually imagine you got your line right along there, this is your property. The mortgage company have first charge. Your equity lies there. You put an RX1 restriction around your equity so no one else can steal it from you. Okay. Depends on what you say, Susie, when you're saying your son avoid paying tax. I mean, there's no inheritance tax, you know. If it was like people. All right, I'm just trying to look for questions because they're all jumping up. I wouldn't. Yeah, if you're going to do a private trust, then create your own. Don't go into a community trust. All right, it's you know, I've dealt with a couple of different courses and of different people that have been involved in trusts for many years, and they would never ever do it. You know. Germany and Croatia, they're both in the EU, aren't they? Germany definitely in the EU. If they've actually come under the Hague Convention, so they have to follow trust law. Anybody that's in the EU, any country, they actually adopted English trust law from the Hague Convention. So they might not like it. Oh, hi from Victoria, Australia. Brilliant. That's Vivian. How do you have to change the land? You don't have to change the land registry, but you can if you like. Okay, so it's up to you. And you know, you'd have to have an individual case and know what you were doing and why you were doing. All right, okay, YouTube. I'll have a look at the all of it later. Obviously, what I've done is I've stopped all of the chat coming on from Facebook or from YouTube because it would have just blown it away. It's been really difficult as it was. I'm really pleased how it went. Rashid, for the United States, the private trusts definitely work. I've got a lot of contacts and colleagues in the United States that do private trusts. How long does the whole process take to create a trust? Well, it depends. I mean, if you were doing it, it might take a while. If Beryl, I'm talking to, if you go in and you're learning how to do it, or if you pay someone else to do it, we can do it, and it's not going to take long at all. If you can't use a public notary, why can you use? If you can't use a public notary, why can you use a public notary? Joey, I don't know really what that means. You can't use a public notary. If you get any court officer sign your documents, they're no longer private, they're public. Can we dip in and out with common law and equity at the same time? I need to get you to explain that a bit more, Kevin. I don't really know what that really means. Linda, was you saying your trust was created? Has anything changed? Not really. Was that, I don't want to say names, but was it for like, you know, somebody else? How to reference the things in the trust, Christian? Well, you do your list of property with all of the different individuals. We give them an assignment number, okay? You assign them all into the trust and they all have their own specific reference number. Remember when I was talking about that London wine company and they lost all of the wine because they hadn't given it all of individual reference numbers. So for instance, just say if you put your house in trust and it'll be like reference number 1, 2, 3. And then you want your furniture in trust as well. And that will come under all furniture in the house. And that's reference number 1, 2, 3, 4 or something like that. You know, you can't really put your future earnings into a trust so you don't pay tax, Sharon. I think that's how you pronounce your name, hopefully. If you have a mortgage, yeah, a lot of equity, the property, can you still put the whole property in trust? Sorry, didn't realize. It doesn't matter about the capitals. What you put into the trust is your equitable interest. So your equitable interest really is the equity. So if you've got a £200,000 house, £50,000 mortgage, £150,000 is your equitable interest. That is what goes on trust. So that there is also what you would do the RX1 restriction on, or whatever it would be called if it was a different country. I think it's called a covenant in Scotland. It's something else that goes on the portfolio in Ireland. Can we save the chat somehow? Oh, I don't know. Can we sell our home when it is in trust? What you do then, if David, when you're, whoever's going to be the trustee, be it you or if there's someone else the trustee, what they have to do is they have to do benefit for the actual beneficiaries, and it's using a trust fund. So let's just say it was money. They can go and invest that money to make it more money. So if you actually got the property, they can sell that home to get a bigger home, because then it's enhancing the trust. Hope that makes sense. But it's the trustees that do it, because the trustees are in charge. I'm trying to see as many. So a mortgage property, Mike, what happens is it's the equity that you put in trusts, but a mortgage basically can. How does Brexit affect us in the UK? Brexit doesn't exist, Darren. Unfortunately. So there is the link. I'll put the link in again. Forgive me that it didn't work. All right, I did it. It works for me. I don't know if you look at the top of the when I touch it, it takes me to the you know, to there. So we don't actually charge for the specific courses, Susie. All right, if you go into if you go and click on the link, go through, and you've got a week free anyway. And RX1, Jessica, it's an RX1. Oh, it works now, does it? Oh, well, there you go. Depends. Christian says, can you avoid property tax with equity? Depends on what you mean by that. I don't know what brilliance commerce is either, but what do you mean by property tax? Are you talking about, I mean, if it's in the United States, they pay, I think it's called property taxes. In England and, well, the UK, they pay council tax. You'd still have to pay the council tax. And the courses don't have a fee. No, what you do is you join the community. Right now you have 7 days free, and then after that it's like £50 monthly, and then you can be in for as long as you want, stop it whenever you want. But you can do all of them courses. There's no extra fees for that. Christian pays €5 a year as property tax. Shouldn't be telling everyone that, Christian. They'll all be jealous. I mean, they pay you know, tons and tons over here. What's that say? If a settler puts themselves as trustee as well, is that not the legal fiction? Right. Well, no, because like you've got to remember, what you'll do is like the settlor will be the legal fiction. The trustee will be the legal fiction. You should have more than one trustee though. So you should have, anyway, but the trust, the property itself goes on trust. But remember what we were talking about. You're mentioning the council. Why are you mentioning the council? Because we were talking about intention, weren't we? So if your intention, right, is to try and avoid council tax, then you're not being equitable. So you can't say things like that. Okay. So, you know, words are important. Can you register the land your home sits on in the statutory, like the RX1? No, you don't own the land. Who was that now? Where was that? It's ran away. Diane. We don't own the land. We're a tenant. What code do we put on the RX1? I don't know what you mean by that, David. If you've seen the RX1 form, right, it's got all these questions to fill in. Brexit doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. All right. So I was down with some really influential, highly linked barristers earlier on this year, and they say, like, you know, it means nothing. It's all political nonsense. All right, which is hopefully you should know by now. It's all nonsense anyway. Trustees are not liable for any personal debts of the other trustees. No, not at all. Why would they be? No, equity law runs everything, but you just need to do it. It doesn't matter if you're a magistrate's court, common law, the run under common law, which means statutory legislation. This is the thing. Common law is statutory legislation. All right. But like equity, you need to do the course. It's pointless listening to anybody on YouTube or Facebook. You need to learn equity properly. Okay. Because most people talk absolute utter nonsense about it. And in the US, it's possible to own land. Yeah, well, in the UK, it's all a tenant. You're a tenant on the land. Can you request land back? No, because you're a tenant on the land, Diane. The royal family own it all. It would depend, Chris, if you haven't had any joy with the RX1, it depends on what you put on the transfer. So I would need to know what's on the transfer. We should have a chat about it and see what happened, because a couple of people were transferring it. There is transferring it from their name to the trustee's name, and then saying the trustee also owned the restriction on the RX1, which they can't be both. Okay, so. Any good equity trust books? Yes. Black's Law, 6th edition. The 6th edition. Okay. The reason why you want the 6th edition is because that's when they changed the money, and then the 6th edition was made. And then the Holy Bible. It's got to be the 1611 King James Version. All right. So you got other books like you call like Suits and Chancery, Gibson's Suits and Chancery, but it was written before they got rid of the money. They got rid of the money in the 1930s, and then the whole thing changed. The equity is the only thing that stands for you can actually get proper justice with your charging or discharging the charges. All right. Well, Jack's saying, what have I actually done? Well, on my trust, like my vehicle is in the private trust, and you know we actually got a parking ticket, but it came through written to the trustee. So I mean that was like over a year ago, and it's like who is the trustee and how can they take a trustee to court? But you know, my colleague, like I was saying, I'm not going to say their names, but I mean, they use private trusts in the bankruptcy court to stop them losing the property every single time. The Bible, it's the King James Version, 1611 edition. That's how we, yeah, it is massive. What do you call it? I've got it up there. Gibson's Suits and Chancery. So, I mean, it's a good book, you know, it is a massive book. However, when we're talking about equity, which is what this is talking about, okay, then it was written before they got rid of the money. Okay, so Jessica's saying, how do you acquire property? Well, you acquire property the same way as you would acquire it with or without a trust. But once you've acquired it, then you would use what we call an acquisition form to actually put it on trust. Okay, so that's how you actually do it. 8th edition, well, I don't know if they've done any more than that, but like I say, the only thing is with that is that it was for equity I'm talking about, right? Not for trust, but for equity. This was written before they got rid of the money. Okay, how do you discharge a debt? Well, you see, this is the thing, Kevin. When you're talking about equity, you can discharge charges. Let's call it a debt. But when you're looking at HMRC, yes, and I know people who've discharged thousands on HMRC and IRS using equity, an acceptance to discharge the charge. But the problem that you've got, right, with council tax, gas and electric utilities is that you're using them. So they are a monthly accumulating bill. So it's very difficult to actually discharge a charge that keeps coming back because you're using them all the time. All right. All we're using the Bible. I'm not getting into religion. I'm not getting into anything. I'm not interested. We'll only use it for the equitable words that we can find. And there's only a few of them that tie into Black's Law. We don't get into anything else. We don't care. Right. What legislation is in the trust? What legislation is in the trust, Ben? Right? There's no legislation in the trust. We don't put legislative words in the trust ever. If a trust is set up and a house is put into the trust and then it is decided to sell the property, does the beneficiary take a loan from the trust rather than drawing the currency down from the trust? Doesn't really make sense to me, that question, Doc. So, I mean, if you're actually, if you're going to sell the property, I mean, it's up to the beneficiary, whatever happens to it, the trustees will do what it states in there. You're going to make the laws and rules and regulations for your trust. Then they have to follow whatever you've written down. You have to be very specific when you create it and what you want to happen. Okay. All right, so David's putting something up there. Don't worry about that. You can't remove your property from the register. No, you can't. Of course you can't. So a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do an affidavit and remove my property from the land registry." You can't do that, but you can do an RX1 with the land registry forms themselves, which actually puts a restriction. Okay. Where can we get the recordings of this? I will be. It's recorded, so I will be putting it out. Okay. All right, yeah, so Jack's just saying, what do you see coming in terms of the economy, CBDCs? Everything's going digital, okay? I watch like Mike Maloney, but I also watch others as well, because sometimes he's great, but other ones, well, other people say that the link is working, but I'm putting it in the chat again to there as well, so that one, all right? So Vanita's saying, is it true you can't apply equity in a magistrate's court, but only in chat? No, that's not true. It's like people don't know what they're talking about. You need to know how to use equity. You need to know how to do it properly with notices properly. We use the law of notices. Well, if you haven't got a home or anything to put in a trust, Jessica, then you don't need a trust. All right. No, it's like, forget council tax. No, Sonia, you have to, when you're using land registry forms, you have to use a legal fiction. Can you use a private trust to prevent planning enforcement? I wouldn't think so. But the thing is, there's other things that you can use though, and that's how equity would come into it. And also, right, the what do you call it? Well, it depends on what you mean, but different types of planning you can actually prevent with risk assessments. Sorry if I'm missing it, but it's the questions are flying up. It's hard to read them, you know. So Maria says, can the settler be a beneficiary? Yes. Would you do a video on the land risk? Yeah, I am going to do that, and it'll be in the trust course. I did do it, but we need to do another one. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put the link again. So hopefully that link will work, and then people can go on and get into Checkmate the Matrix. I gave you loads. Adam, did you not see all of it? I gave you loads of the courses in there. When I went through, I shared my screen. Did you see them? Sister Beryl got signed up. Sister says, great, enjoyed it. Good. Okay. I don't want to share the screen again because it messes things up. But there's about 7 or 8 different courses in there. Link works fine now. Good. But I'm going to keep putting it in so people can click on that one. Some people are saying the one up at the top. But you get, I mean, that's the thing. The trustees, like Sonia, you got to be very careful who you got to, you know, like know the trustees. You got to trust them, and you've got to have some kind of good relationship, you know. I've never ever, I don't know what you mean by a code, David. I've done dozens and dozens of RX1 forms for people all over the country, and we've only had a problem with 2 or 3 of them. But I've never had a code on them, you know. What does that say? Kazi. Right, again, Kazi, right? It's like, well, you're talking about who's going to get assets and everything like that. You have to write it down. Think of a will and how you're going to actually create a will. All right. Then what you're going to do is you're going to like do that, right, and write it out so that whoever gets these benefits of the trust. It's a very similar thing. Okay. How much does it cost if we do it ourselves? Well, nothing then, Liz. The link's working again. Good. Does equity cover for unsigned challenges by letter? Letters are always unsigned from government. Well, it depends what you mean, but I mean, if it's like what's from government, a tax bill, then equity can take care of that. You can discharge that. What I would do with my will, Emma, is I would actually say on my will that everything is held in trust. You need to follow whatever's written on the trust. Okay. Sandra, like you'd need, remember, once you're the settlor, once you've created the trust as a settlor, then that's you finished. You're not settlor anymore. You can only be it just to create the trust. Right, but you're going to need, you can't just be sitting in all three roles. There's only really two after that, which is the trustee and the beneficiary. I know for a fact, right, going into a court with trust documents written in all cap names, that's been the trustee and the beneficiary are identical, and they cannot touch the property. But that's not what I would recommend. I've seen it happen. Right, but like, you know, you need to create it correctly. So you need to have someone who's going to help you be be a trustee. You can't try and do everything. I mean, what would happen, right? Just think about it. You're trustee and beneficiary, but then so what's going to happen anyway if you had passed away? Yeah, there's definitely, if you go into check the matrix, you'll see there about a private trust. Okay, you will see it. You are an applicant, Adam, if you're doing the RX1, unless you are a conveyancer. But you would always no, you well, you would be. You know, it's you need to be. How much does it cost if I'm going to rate a fee? Is that what you mean? I know people that are, Charlie, I know people that are still trying to find private bank accounts, but it's very, unless you're a billionaire, it's very difficult. There you go. See, Sandra, what Dimebow's saying, you can set up your corporations to be your trustees if you can't have anyone whatsoever. You can't, a corporation, a limited company, legally is what you call a person. So it can do it, yeah. You can definitely discharge. We were like speaking with someone during the week there. They discharged $108,000 of a tax bill with one notice in equity. All right, my throat is killing me. I haven't discharged anybody's mortgage, Susie, but I do know someone who did, but it was only as a last resort because they were in foreclosure. Paste the link again. There you go. So the link is there's more than one course in there. It's just not the trust course. Obviously, that's a big part of what we've been talking about. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna have to shut off soon. So does a house need to be mortgage free to be put in a trust? No. And you don't need to inform the mortgage company either, Daphne. Right? You can create the trust. Is the info reference power of attorney? Depends on what you mean, Angela. Power of attorney, or is it a lasting power of attorney with the Office of the Public Guardian? Is that what you mean? Or power of attorney for, like, could a PMA be a trustee? A PMA is not a legal entity. PMA is not a legal fiction. Currently pending approval. Oh, well, I'm on here, so I mean, I don't know. Right, I'd probably have to go in and approve them, but I mean, I can't do it when I'm talking to all of you lot. All right, but I'm gonna have to shoot off soon anyway. I need a wee. Like I say, like you know, there's questions just flying up and down. It's really difficult to read. So if I haven't answered anything, it's not I'm ignoring you. It's just too fast. Okay. All right. So Louise is asking, can you get an account with this Meet N? Yeah, you can. If I sent you a link to be on here, on that link just below it, it says powered by, and it's got their website thing. You click on it and then you can get a sorry if I see I'm missing it. It's just like it's going like literally going whiz. All right. I don't know if it's Mushashi on the back wall. The diplomatic passport card, you mean from, I haven't got any links for that because I'm finding them incredibly difficult to actually get a hold of. So David, you must be talking about like the lasting power of attorney from the Office of Public Guardian. All right, Bijan Dinesh, I think what you should do is go and watch the replay then, okay? Just spent 2 hours going through. You don't need to actually worry about BAL1. You don't need to worry about the equity changing. You're not going to keep a little, like, you know, what happens if the market crashes when it crashes, because it will very soon, and then you've got no equity at all, right? You can't go up and down like that. It doesn't matter. It's whatever's there is in trust. As simple as that. All right. I think I'll have to shoot off, people, because I'm getting a really sore throat. I've drank all of that. That was full. So I need to get rid of it. Okay. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Yeah, lasting power of attorney, Judith, that's right. So it costs, it's from the government, from the Office of the Public Guardian, which is a government website, and it's £82 each. That is correct. Okay. All right. Now then. I've never known anyone that can create a bond for the insurance that was real anyway. So, Christian, what you'd have to do is email me gold, G-O-L-D, like the precious metal, gold at claimstrawman.com. And because obviously that's a private basis. Okay. All right, I'm going to have to go. Okay, so hopefully that you enjoyed it anyway, and there's still over 200 people in there, so fingers crossed you enjoyed it. So what I'll do is I will